Welcome to the Darkstream. Vox Day, voxday.blogspot.com. And let's face it, disappointed Vikings fan. Thanks for tuning in. Sorry about the delay, but I had to see how the season came to an end. I appreciate all of you tuning in. Frankly, I was a little shocked to see that there were so many people waiting to get this started, but I'm glad that you did. And I think that this is going to be a humdinger of a Darkstream, if I do say so myself. I don't want to talk about any other issues tonight. We're going to focus on the topic of conversation, which is revealing Dr. Jordan Peterson's actual IQ. Now, to begin, I think that we should note a couple things. First of all, it's important to understand that intelligent people, highly intelligent people, do have an ability to recognize other people, other highly intelligent people. It's actually quite possible to identify more or less where, the sort of range of or standard deviation where a person's intelligence falls. However, there are sometimes complicating factors, especially when people have particularly high verbal intelligence. When their intelligence inclines to the verbal, it often causes us to naturally overrate their intelligence. In other ways, people who are unusually low in certain areas can actually have more effective functional intelligence than their IQ would tend to indicate. A number of very highly intelligent people have occasionally expressed some surprise at my IQ being a bit lower than they anticipated. And it makes sense to them when they find out that I am quite literally retarded when it comes to spatial relations. I'm not even allowed to try to pack the car. And my best friend's favorite game is to give me these wooden blocks that come with cards that show you what pattern to put them in. I can't do it. I mean, it's, ridiculous. But I would never, ever expect anyone to take my word or take my opinion or rely on my impression of anyone else. You shouldn't make a statement about someone's intelligence unless you have direct, objective information. All right? Now, the important thing to understand, and what a lot of you who are younger may not realize, is that until 1995, every American who not every American, but the vast majority of Americans who attended university took intelligence tests, which were publicized. It was called the PSAT and the SAT. Now, they still exist, but they are no longer intelligence tests. They changed them to make them more akin to the ACT, which is an achievement test, and it measures what you know. It's a measure of your store of knowledge rather than your cognitive capacity. The ideal IQ test is something that doesn't measure knowledge at all, but only your analytical abilities and your the speed at which you think. And so, furthermore, there are other tests that people in other countries take, such that are considered to be reasonable proxies for proper intelligence tests. So when you're looking at the GRE, when you're looking at the LSAT, there are a lot of different tests that are functionally IQ tests. And so, and we know, furthermore, we actually know how they approximate to an IQ test because Mensa, the high IQ organization, which requires 132 IQ or higher, sets specific standards that you have to exceed on those different tests. And this is very, very useful and relevant information. And so, anyhow, let's see here. So what I thought was interesting was that when I looked at what, I had assumed that Jordan Peterson was highly intelligent just because everyone said he was. Everyone talked about him being highly intelligent. And so it was a little confusing when I read his books and realized how totally incoherent they are. And I put that down to the fact that he's crazy. I never really spent any time analyzing this. Patricia, you're wrong. When you say the SAT doesn't really test intelligence, just your amount of knowledge, that's only true of the post-1995 SAT. Okay? So don't argue with me about this. We all know what the reality of it is. Okay? So up until 1995, the SAT was an IQ test. After that, it's not. That's why Mensa doesn't accept it anymore. So now, Peterson has actually made some comments about his IQ, and I'm going to read it to you here. He said, on video, there's a video of this. I took this from the transcript. He said, "I don't know what my IQ is. I had it tested at one point. It's in excess of 150, but I don't know exactly where it lands now. I'm not overwhelmingly intelligent from a quantitative perspective, I think my GRE scores on the quantitative end of things for about 70 to 75th percentile, which isn't too bad given that you're competing against other people who are going into graduate school. But there's a big difference between 75th and 99th percentile, and that's where I think it was verbally, something like that." Now, let me first point out that if you consider the fact that Jordan Peterson is a narcissist, and if you consider the fact that he wrote a letter in a publication called The Gateway after he finished his university career at the University of Alberta, in 1984, he published a piece called U of A Not Worth My While. And what he's doing is he's complaining bitterly about the experience he had there. And what really struck my attention here is it's a pretty long piece, so I'll post on the blog later, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. But this is really interesting. He refers to the damnable multiple choice tests, precisely because they dwell to such a large degree on the trivial, take an equal amount of time for everyone to prepare for. One never has any idea what ridiculous questions of minuscule importance will be asked at any one time. Logically enough, the preparatory time for such exercises in futility cuts into any possible time that might be spent productively, reading, for example, or, dare I say it, writing. Believe it or not, there are some of us out here who desire an education for whom marks and jobs are not everything. We're the ones who deserve to be in university. I'll tell anyone who will listen of the incredible frustration I have encountered, and I'm not alone, at being forced to occupy my valuable time with some banal triviality sheerly to keep my marks up. Not to learn, mind you, but to keep those multiple choice marks high. It's farcical, but if I wish to continue my education, it's vital. Now, that right there is enough to tell you that he's not highly intelligent. Anyone who is highly intelligent licks their chops when they see a multiple choice test. I can ace any multiple choice test on just about any subject. When I went to a much better university than the University of Alberta, I didn't bother going to my classes if I found out that there were going to be multiple choice tests, and I would usually get at the A- level. Why? Because when you're highly intelligent, the answer is always there. The answer is always literally right in front of you. And all you need to do is ascertain whatever the little trick rules are that they apply. So the fact that he had to put in a bunch of study time in order to take multiple choice tests tells you right there he's not very smart. There is absolutely no way he has the claimed 150 IQ. Now, how am I so confident about that? Well, it's not really fair to have a discussion like this without, full disclosure. So, I went to Brangle, which is just one of the many places that you can convert IQ relevant test scores to IQ. I punched in my SATs, 710 on the math, 730 on the verbal. This is back in 1985, so it's still relevant as the IQ style test. And when you do that, what you come up with, as you can see, is it reports an IQ of 152. Now, I believe that is slightly, not so much exaggerated, but I think it's using a 16, a standard deviation of 16, which is why it reports 152. A standard deviation of 15 would produce 149. Okay? So I know exactly what a 150 IQ looks like. I have one. And what I can tell you is that there is absolutely nothing about Jordan Peterson's writing that reflects a 150 IQ. So then we can take this further, because somebody sent me an email today writing up a revelation on the origin of Jordan Peterson. And I posted part of it on the blog, and it was interesting. But what caught my attention, and this is something that I missed, and this is why I'm going to be adding a appendix to Jordanetics, because we now know that there's an absolute ceiling on Jordan Peterson's intelligence. How can I say that? Because something that I somehow missed when I was reading Maps of Meaning was that Jordan Peterson wanted to go to law school. So why is that significant? It's significant for two reasons. Number one, because he wanted to go to law school, that meant that he had to take the LSAT, the LSAT, which at the time that he took it was also an IQ test of sorts. More importantly, we also know from Jordan Peterson himself that he didn't do very well. I'm quoting from Maps of Meaning. I wanted to become a corporate lawyer, had written the law school admissions test, the LSAT, had taken 2 years of appropriate preliminary courses. I wanted to learn the ways of my enemies and embark upon a political career. Remember that. Oh, he doesn't want to be a politician. Well, really? This plan disintegrated. The world obviously did not need another lawyer, and I no longer believed that I knew enough to masquerade as a leader. So what happened? He didn't score well enough on the LSAT to be accepted at the University of Alberta Faculty of Law. That is, without question, where he would have been applying, because he did end up going to the University of Alberta. And here's another indicator. He didn't go right to a top university. First, he went to a regional college, just like another overrated IQ, Barack Obama. It's a lot easier to get in as a transfer student than it is as a freshman if your test scores aren't good. So this is where we start to be able to figure out what that ceiling is. The University of Alberta Faculty of Law. Now this is the current stuff. This is the current level, but there's no reason to believe that it's substantially different than it was when Jordan Peterson was applying. First, let me point out the Mensa IQ requirement of 132 requires a total percentile rank of 95 or better. So we know right there that a 95 percentile on the LSAT means that your IQ is 132. So the average LSAT accepted at the University of Alberta Faculty at Law is the 90th percentile on the GRE. So this tells us that Jordan Peterson's score on the LSAT had to be lower than the 90th percentile. In fact, the 90th percentile, remember, on the LSAT, it's a subset of the overall population. People who take the LSAT are smarter on average than the average individual. They're not, however, as much smarter as people would like to believe. Jordan Peterson, in fact, actually says that people who take the GRE have an average IQ of 115, which is ridiculous. They're not a full standard deviation higher. We know from Mensa that it's actually a 3-point percentile bump. Remember, the Mensa requirement of 132 is at the 98th percentile, but they accept the 95th percentile on the LSAT. So that means that we have to bump that 90th percentile on the GRE to get into University of Alberta Faculty of Law. We have to bump that up to the 93rd percentile of the general population. So can anyone tell me what the 93rd percentile of the general population is? It is, in fact, depending on whether you use a 15 or a 16 standard deviation, it's an IQ of 123 to 124. That is the ceiling on Jordan Peterson's IQ. All right? Jordan Peterson, without question, without reasonable doubt, has an IQ that is below 124. Now we can actually do better than this, though. That's what's interesting, because Peterson gave us a very, very good clue. Remember, Jordan Peterson is a habitual liar. 150 is the 99th percentile on the GRE. So what he suggests about his IQ being in excess of 150, but having, on the one hand, 90, maybe something that he can't quite remember exactly, but he thinks it was in the 99th percentile, which is bullshit. This guy is a narcissist. He knows exactly what all of his scores were. He knows what all of his scores were. I guarantee you. And so, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's say that he did score in the 99th percentile on the GRE, which he took after bombing the LSAT so badly that he couldn't get into law school. And let's say that he said that his quantitative scores were between the 70th and 75th percentile. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's say the 75th percentile. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, you can't average percentiles, but actually you can, because in the case of the GRE, the 50th percentile on the quant is 152.6. The 50th percentile on the verbal is 150.5. So the difference is minimal. So now let's put those numbers together, okay? So if you put together the 75th percentile and the 99th percentile and combine them, that puts you at the 87th percentile. Now remember, that's on the GRE. Now we have to shift that to the general population. If you recall, we know from Mensa that we need to shift it up 3 points. And so that puts him at the 90th percentile, which provides an IQ of 120. You will notice that this is entirely consistent with what we already know is an IQ ceiling of 124. Now, on the other hand, if we assume that he's exaggerating a little bit, as we know that Peterson is inclined to do, and we assume that his actual scores were 70th percentile on the quant. Remember, he said from the 70th to the 75th. So we already checked out the high end. Let's check out the low end now. And let's assume that his exaggeration on the verbal was a similar 5%. So instead of being on the 99th percentile, he's only on the 95th percentile on verbal, which is still very good and is consistent with his observed verbal skills. That would bring his GRE percentile down to 82.5, which would make his general population percentile 85.5. That equates to an estimated IQ, not an estimated, a calculated IQ of 115 to 117. So what we know is that Jordan Peterson's IQ, based on his academic failures, his inability to get into the law school, and based on what he himself reports on his GRE scores, we know that Jordan Peterson has an IQ between 115 and 120. And this explains why he is such a gamma midwit, or why he appears to be such a gamma midwit, because he is a gamma midwit. So now let's look at the question here from Flublet. Okay, but how would he have tricked so many people with much higher IQs if his is below 124? Because of the incoherence with which he writes. He writes so completely unstructured, incoherent, and all over the place that when you can't make proper sense of it, and you're told that he is brilliant, then you assume that it is brilliant, but it's not. And if you look at the way that he is, if you look at the way that he was a created figure, a media created figure, I was shocked when I did the look at this chart here. I'm going to show you a chart here that is going to really surprise you, because it really surprised me. I mean, you understand I am a fairly minor public figure. I'm about as minor a public figure as you can get and still be considered a public figure in any way, shape, or form. So when I was reading about how ineffectual he was, and about him being a media creation, I went and looked this up. And this is kind of astonishing to me. This is the Google Trends for Jordan Peterson versus Vox Day between 2011 and September 30th, 2016. Believe it or not, I am the red line. This is worldwide. Now remember, Peterson was supposed to be this really significant major figure. All right? He was literally nobody. He was nowhere near as significant as I am, even though I'm a really minor figure. Look at this. You know, there's no question at all who was the more significant intellectual figure at the time. Now, have a look at this one. Okay, so keep that in mind. The red line is me. The blue line is Jordan Peterson right up through September 3rd. Now, keep in mind, this was despite him having had a 13-part series on the Canadian television based on his Maps of Meaning book. So they were already trying to push him back then. Now, I'm going to turn that off and I'm going to show you the other chart. This is the updated chart from October 1st, 2016 to the present. Again, I am the red line. Peterson is the blue line. So what happened here on October 2nd, 2016? That's when they started pushing him incessantly on Canadian television. And that's when he blew up, began to blow up, and then you can see the really big explosion right towards the end of 2017. So what this means is that everything they told you about Jordan Peterson's organic popularity is a lie. He is and has always been nothing but a media concoction. He is a media creation. In fact, given his inept performances on Comedy Central, and whenever he is faced with somebody who is even modestly intelligent, like Sam Harris completely destroyed him in that debate. That's why Peterson made up that lie about drinking cider and not sleeping for 25 days and all that sort of thing. I strongly suspect that he was prepared for that famous interview with Kathy Newman in much the same way that Tucker Carlson noted that they used to prepare Jesse Jackson for interviews with him. Tucker Carlson talks about the way that he would talk to Jesse Jackson in the green room, and Jackson had no idea what Tucker was talking about. Then he would go in and then not only have intelligent answers for Tucker, but actually have responses to Tucker's responses. They were all on note cards. He was drilled. He was prepared. And so we don't know that that's the case. But given that we know that media creatures are created in that way, Ehlers is buying into the nonsense. Peterson was popular because he fought against mandatory pronouns. No. They used that situation with mandatory pronouns to make him famous and to make him popular. It was manufactured. It was absolutely... I mean, look at this. Where is the organic popularity there? You know that I am not a significant or massively popular figure. And yet that organic popularity, what little extent of it that there is, absolutely dwarfs Jordan Peterson for up to a period of 12 years after he published Maps of Meaning. And so there is absolutely no way that Jordan Peterson's popularity is organic. And there's absolutely no way that Jordan Peterson can reasonably be considered brilliant, highly intelligent, or particularly smart. He's not. I mean, he is literally 2 standard deviations less intelligent than someone like me, someone like Owen Benjamin. Okay? I'll repeat that for those of you who have tuned in late. Jordan Peterson's IQ, based on the public information that he has made available, is necessarily between 115 and 120 IQ. It's possible that I'm off by a little bit on the low end. It's possible that I'm off by a little bit on the high end, but there is absolutely no chance that Jordan Peterson is qualified for Mensa. There is no chance that Jordan Peterson is would have qualified for national merit if he was an American. He didn't even get in to he didn't even qualify to get in to a school where the average accepted IQ is 123 or 124. So, you can look this stuff up. You can, I'm not asking you to take my word for any of this. I'm saying look it up. If we split the difference between the averages, it looks like his IQ is around 117. If I had to pick a specific number based on the information that we have available, I would say that Jordan Peterson's IQ is 117. And if you want to ask him a question, the question that I would ask him is, Jordan, what were your LSAT scores and what were your GRE scores exactly? Because that will tell us exactly what his IQ is. And yes, I mean, IQ does change a bit over time as you age. I don't feel I'm quite as sharp as I was when I was 18. On the other hand, hopefully over time, you develop some level of wisdom. You certainly have a much larger knowledge base to work with. So you should be more capable overall because, as I've said, intelligence is nothing but the size of the gun. You still need ammunition. You still need to learn where to aim it. So, anyhow, I was kind of astonished when I looked it up. It's kind of funny. Ibian 666 says, this is pathetic. No, what's pathetic is Jordan Peterson running around trying to convince everybody that he's brilliant when he's got 117 IQ. All right? And again, you don't have to take my word for it. I'm not asking you to take my word for it. I am telling you to go ahead and do the work yourself. Work it out yourself. You're going to get a very, very, very similar answer. And you can ask him, look, I just gave you full disclosure. That's full disclosure right there. I'm in Mensa. So at a minimum, I'm at the 132 level. That I'm a national merit finalist. So there you have yet another clue. There are absolute floors. And here, this you'll have to take my word on the actual scores, but those are my actual scores on the SAT. If I was going to invent something, I would have preferred them to be higher. But so if to properly give the range, my IQ is between 149 and 152. Usually when people ask me, I just say 150. It's a nice round number. It's not exaggerating. And I always like the gammas. You don't strike me as someone as a high IQ. I'd give you about 135 at max. That's because you're a midwit. You can't even follow the stuff that I'm talking about here. No, Mensa is only 132. Yet Jordan Peterson claimed to have an IQ somewhat north of 150. I believe what he was doing was he was referring to his verbal score on the GRE and making use of the percentile on that, ignoring the fact that you have to take the quantitative into account too. That would be like me saying, well, if I was to do the same thing, I could say, well, okay, my verbal was 730, so if I double that, then I scored the equivalent of 1460, and therefore my IQ is even higher. In fact, yeah, let's actually do that right now. I'm going to dig that up right now. Let's see here. Okay, so we go. So now suddenly I'm magically wow, look at that. I just gave myself 2 more IQ points. Isn't that cool? Oh, I have to update it this way. Hang on. Refresh cache. Okay. Okay, well, this didn't update, so I don't know why it's not cooperating. But the point is that you can't do that. You have to look at the whole thing. Now, 117 is not stupid. 117 is more than a standard deviation above the norm. That's why he looks smart to so many stupid people. The Darth Sniper, I'm a new reviewer. I think I'm going to unsub. Of the 7 streams I've watched, IQ probably came up 80 times, LOL. Tell you what, I'll just kick you off. There. You're gone. The whole point of this question, the whole point of this debate is not about IQ. It's not about me being smart. It's about the fact that Jordan Peterson is a fucking liar. Okay? Do you not understand that that is the point? Jordan Peterson is not brilliant. All the BS in his books, all the incoherence is not super smart stuff that you just can't understand. It's just total nonsense. All right? So it's all deception. It's all wizardry. And this is why I think that Nationalist Bear is right. It's probably why he aims for a low-class, low IQ audience. Precisely because those are the only people that he can fool consistently over time. I just proved he's a liar, Ibian666. He claims his IQ is 150. The maximum that his IQ could possibly be, based on his own biography, is 124. Okay, you're gone. Show your work. What do you think I've been doing for the last hour, you moron? Gosh, I hate gammas. They're just so fundamentally deceitful that they can't even fathom when you're telling the truth. I mean, I am telling you nothing but the absolute facts here. You know, the only thing that we don't know is specifically what Jordan Peterson's LSAT was. We don't know that the law school that he applied to was the University of Alberta Faculty of Law. We have a pretty good idea because he applied to the University of Alberta after that. But you know, those are the only 2 things that we don't know for sure. And those are things that you can ask Jordan Peterson yourself. And if he has a shred of integrity, he will give you a specific answer. How do you know his LSAT is the reason he didn't get accepted? because the only two things that they accept on are grades and LSAT. And he talks about how he took a proper course of preparation to go to the law school. Most of you here, even most of you fans of Jordan Peterson, are smarter than Jordan Peterson is. Understand that. Accept that. I think Peterson actually went to McGill for graduate school. Yeah, he may have, but we're talking. He graduated from the University of Alberta. After, he tried to apply to the law school earlier on. He went to this regional college for 2 years, and then applied to the law school, didn't get in, and then went and ended up taking psychology there. Is it possible that Peterson will simply fade into obscurity and then return a few years later as a better liar? No, there's no way. So what's important to keep in mind here? What was I just going to say? No, see, this is why stupid people just sometimes need to learn to shut up and listen when their cognitive superiors are talking. There's a difference between absolute conclusive proof and sufficient evidence to lead you to correct conclusions. Try to keep Sherlock Holmes in mind, okay? This is not Sherlock Holmesian. This is really, really easy, obvious stuff, okay? Is it possible that the law schools that rejected Jordan Peterson were something other than the Alberta School of Law? It is possible. Guess what that implies? It implies that Jordan Peterson is even more stupid. It implies that Jordan Peterson's IQ is even lower because they have lower standards. And if he couldn't get into those lower standards, that means that his LSAT score was even lower. All right? You need to understand that I am actually giving Jordan Peterson the benefit of the doubt here. All right? Also, keep in mind that it is very, very rare for very high IQ people to be permitted to become professors. At the 150 IQ level, which Peterson claims, 97% of those people are excluded from the professions, including academia. So, given that he was a professor, that was your first clue that he was nowhere nearly as intelligent as he was pretending. Why do dumb people gravitate to media? Because it's a very shallow. You're able to be very shallow and not very intelligent, but there's still a perception of intelligence, especially if you're glib. Vox literally explained everything step by step. Whoever doesn't get it probably shouldn't be here. Absolutely. As far as, and here's the other thing to keep in mind. I've been wondering for a long time why Jordan Peterson talks so much about being exposed, his fear of being exposed, his fear of making a mistake. And so I wondered what that would be. I wondered why would this guy fear exposure so much? And I thought that maybe it was something that he'd done that he was ashamed about, or that sort of thing, especially when he had those, bizarre dreams about his cousin and his grandmother and all this sort of thing. And so if you take into account the fact that he has been pretending to be highly intelligent in public for 2 years, Now we know what he's afraid of. He's afraid of being exposed as an imposter because he is an imposter. And I've been telling you that he's an intellectual charlatan as long as I've been paying attention to him. I knew he was an intellectual charlatan. I just assumed that he was an intelligent intellectual charlatan. He's not. He's just a run-of-the-mill midwit who has learned how to act intelligent. He's basically an actor. He is playing the role of a highly intelligent intellectual, and he actually plays it pretty well. Why are people convinced he's smart? Because they've been told he's smart, and because he effectively plays the role of a smart person. But it is no more legitimate than Denise Richards playing a nuclear engineer in a Bond movie. You know, at least with Denise Richards, they put on a white lab coat and a pair of glasses and put her hair up in a ponytail. And they say, oh, see, she's smart. You don't buy it because you're like, you know, look, we've seen Denise Richards in other movies before. We've heard her talk. We know she's not actually that smart. But with Jordan Peterson, all you see is the guy got propped up by the media. And this also explains why he's constantly doing this. I've been thinking about this for a long time, and it's why he never answers a fucking question. His whole game is evasion. His whole game is to maintain the fraud. And he is a fraud. His IQ is around 117. That's not bad. That's plenty smart. But it's not 150. It's 2 standard deviations below 150. And those of us who actually are that intelligent, who trouble to pay enough attention to him, we all know that he's not that smart. I mean, I've talked to some of my friends who are as intelligent as I am or more intelligent, and they're all like, you know, they read a little bit of the stuff that he says, and they're like, please, you know. Let's see. They said the excuse is going to be live cargo called it. Peterson failed to get in because he scored high on the LSAT, but affirmative action got in his way. No, it didn't. This was 1984. How many Africans were applying to the University of Alberta Faculty of Law in 1984? Also, politically correct professors denied him a spot. Jordan Peterson has never been denied by professors. He's been handed opportunities. You know, he got handed that Harvard opportunity, and what a joke. I mean, now of course, Harvard is a joke, as we know from the David Hogg situation. How do you or your friends even understand Jordan Peterson in the first place? It's so confusing because we can see through the baffle garble. You know, we can follow all the weird, incoherent strands of thought and see that there's no there. You know, that's his deal. One of somebody pointed out that Peterson talks as if he's about to get to the point, but it never arrives. It's all a fraud. Yeah, Tuduk says Milo saw through it right away and was viciously attacked. Milo is highly intelligent. That's why Milo saw through it right away. That's why I saw through it right away. You know, the thing is that most of us don't actually pay close attention. I can tell you right now that Stefan Molyneux has seen through him. He may not say it. He may not be interested or willing to call out a fellow Canadian, and that's fine. But I guarantee you that Stefan is intelligent enough that he has realized that he's full of shit and that he's an intellectual fraud. Has this damaged your relationship with Stefan? No, not in the slightest. He talks about the Bible more than Vox. Are you kidding? This is a man who asked, do you believe in Jesus? He said, it depends on what you mean by Jesus. Exactly. Look, I don't know what more I can tell you than Jordan Peterson is an intellectual fraud. He is not highly intelligent. He has an IQ in the 117 range, and he is a media construction. All right? We even know, read the introduction to 12 Rules of Life. We even know who originally picked him out and set him on his path. And he's been passed along to others who found him useful. Now he's with CAA, and now they're attempting to turn him into the next big intellectual guru. But it's not going to work, because they should have picked somebody who is smarter. I mean, all this information is out there. You don't need me to tell you this. You can look it and you can prove it easily yourself. It's already been proved, you moron. ACXID is clearly a little slow on the uptake. This is totally proven. There is no question whatsoever about this. Remember, you're forgetting that we're not just dealing with the LSAT deal. We're also dealing with the publicly reported GRE percentiles. Let's see. He's verbally good on his feet. According to him, he tested out near the 99th percentile on the GRE verbal. Okay, this guy just called him. Nope, I did not do it with any assumptions whatsoever. You are gone, Gamma Boy. Again, all you need to do is work out the percentiles. All you need to do is ask Jordan Peterson, what was your LSAT score? Why were you rejected from law school? What are your GRE scores? That's all you need to do. So, anyhow, that's let's see here. Rewind the video and watch as Vox leads you through the deductive reasoning. Stop asking dumb questions. Yeah, that's exactly the point. All the clues were always there from the beginning. I missed it. I should have seen it as soon as I was reading Maps of Meaning. There was so much other stuff that I was focusing on when I was reading Maps of Meaning that I just completely failed to notice I totally failed to notice the clue that was given to us with regards to the law school. Are you sure that SAT is a good analog for IQ? Yes, absolutely. It depends when you took it, of course. I should say the pre-1995 SAT is a IQ proxy. So, do you believe Peterson is extremely verbally gifted? I wouldn't say extremely, but I do think that he is verbally gifted. I think that you need to keep in mind that he's targeting an audience with 100 to 105 IQ. Did Peterson write his own book? Almost certainly. It's incoherent enough. He might have had some assistance on 12 Rules of Life. I think that it's probably pretty heavily edited because it is less, as meandering as it is a little bit more coherent than Maps of Meaning. Let's see. And to think this all started because Jordan Peterson's fans pissed off Vox. Yeah, I mean, that's true. What do you think Charles Murray's IQ is? I have no idea. This is true. The only reason that Vox didn't catch on to Jordan Peterson sooner is because he didn't pay much attention to him. I didn't. His audience is low status average IQ, unsuccessful gammas. That's who he preys upon. That's who he is there to prevent from turning to Jesus Christ and to prevent from turning to nationalism. That is why he exists. Jordan Peterson is 150 IQ with a standard deviation of 50. That doesn't even make sense, but that's funny. Yeah, Milo is almost certainly 3SD. If you think that, I mean, Jordan Peterson is verbally gifted. Milo is extraordinarily verbally gifted. I have never seen anyone who can think and speak as quickly as and dynamically as he does. And I'm talking about in personal conversation. I'm not talking about in performance. I mean, I think that most of the people recognize here that I'm not exactly a slouch in the intellectual department. And Milo is not only capable of keeping up with my thinking as we're engaged in conversation, but he is speaking much more fluidly than I am. He is speaking as quickly as he thinks, which is, or at least a much closer approximation. And it's really striking. I mean, I've never seen anyone who can turn a room around like Milo can. Let's see. A lot of heat between Talib and Molyneux today on IQ. Yeah, I mean, I love Talib, but he's wrong on the IQ thing. He's just wrong. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, well, I think we've covered it all. So again, the answer to what is Jordan Peterson's actual IQ is a range of 115 to 120. We will say 117 as an average. If you doubt me, then please, by all means, go ahead and get Jordan Peterson to publicly reveal his LSAT scores and his GRE scores, and then we will know beyond any shadow of a doubt what the truth is. So thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you at the next Darkstream. Have a good evening.